morning, everybody. Tobin and Leroy here with you, 560 WQAM. Happy Friday, Leroy.
I'm working some angles here.
Angles. Whoa. Really?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth with the Michigan SID.
Ooh, little insight. Little insight on Kenny G. Little insight on Kenny G.
So bear with me.
Wow. Dolphins about to have some sweet trench music with Kenneth Grant.
Can I just say this?
Hmm?
That is a large human being.
Big.
And more importantly, never missed a game.
Dude, never missed a game, played a ton of snaps.
And so one of the things I like is 100% not getting anybody who you have injury concerns about.
Yep.
He can come in day one and play. Now, for your dummies out there, okay, I'm going to say this.
Goods, Leroy.
And I'm going to say this because you just don't know any better. He is not here to get 15 sacks. Okay? He is a people mover.
Yeah, we got Chop Robinson for that.
So at the end of the year, don't pull a Christian Wilkins, Dolphins. Dude. Don't say, oh, you don't have any sack numbers when that's not going to be his job.
Can I tell you something, dude? Can I tell you something? I want to be happy about the pick. When I am happy about the pick. But when I heard Chris Greer allude to that last night, I'm like, sacks aren't the thing. Oh, now they're not the thing.
Now they're not.
Now they're not the thing.
Right.
Now they're not the thing.
That's why I said that, because this guy is on the field for one job: consume space and blockers.
Big.
So
big.
If he does everything that I would anticipate he can do on the football field, everybody else's sack numbers are going to go up.
Literally, this is like there's what is the concern of him? Everybody's upset because he's too fat. Like, he's been that size. And by the way, did you see him catch that running back? Huge and mobile, dude. Mobile.
That is one of the more incredible things. And I'll tell you this. One of the things that I thought about Mason Graham.
Moonlight Graham.
Is when you watch him, doesn't he look really small?
Yeah, a little bit.
So when you're that small and you play D tackle, you better be lightning fast and you better have something, a skill set that enables you to play at that size. And what I would say is that you're going to be dealing, when you're Mason Graham, you're going to be dealing with guys that are 30, 40 pounds heavier than you.
He also led, I think he set the record of Michigan pass breakups by a defensive lineman as well. Gets those hands up, then paws up.
Again, if you're looking at the NFL draft and you're looking at what you want your defensive tackle to look like, he's it.
Dude, last night, let's get to our headlines, which are brought to you by Doral Hyundai. Doral Hyundai, choose from over 1,300 new Hyundai miles in inventory at the Tucson, Sonata, and Palisade. Remember, when it comes to Hyundai, the great deals are at Doral Hyundai. Yes, the Dolphins select Kenneth Grant with their 13th pick in the NFL draft. But the thing is, Dade South says he might be faster than Restrepo. I don't like that, Dade South. We'll get to Cam Ward too, because he was besmirched yesterday. Our beloved Cam Ward was disrespected on the worldwide leader, all because of one man who, by the way, I was giving props to throughout the draft process. But you ever have somebody you really like and you're just like, you're cringing at the way they're behaving? And because a lot of people say he's washed. I understand. But I have respect for the man, mostly because he was very cordial and had Leroy baseball stats. Mel Kiper Jr. ruined the draft yesterday. And I don't say that lightly. He ruined the draft yesterday because he couldn't shut up about Shedeur Sanders. Dude, we see your big board. We see your best available. You love Shedeur Sanders. Cool. You don't have to ruin the number one picks moment. And that's what happened yesterday. They ruined it. That's neither here nor there. He also had Kenny G as his 30th on the big board. So he's like, oh, it's a little bit of a reach for the Dolphins. But respectfully to Mel, okay, I'll take Nick Saban. As much of a rat bastard as he is, that guy coached college. He's good. And he was like him, Mason Graham, most dominant players we faced. And I was like,
Right.
I'll take that.
Here's what I would say, and here's why
Hyper.
Here's why when I talk about the draft, I'm always a little uncertain about where guys are going to get drafted. When I start watching this draft and I'm seeing guys go, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't realize there was this many offensive linemen available because we hadn't talked about them. We hadn't heard people talk about them, right? And there was a lot of offensive linemen. Then the defensive linemen start going. So what you have to do is you have to go, oh, this is a point of emphasis in this year's draft, offense and defensive line. So what happens is it doesn't matter where these guys grade out. Once the first domino falls, everybody starts drafting these positions and other positions move down. So when you talk about wide receiver, when you talk about quarterbacks, when you talk about all the other guys that may have been rated higher as far as prospects, once they start a run on a certain position, all bets are off because all of these guys have more value now. And so when offensive linemen, when defensive linemen start going, that's why I sent you the text saying, if I'm the Dolphins, I just take Tyler Warren. Because I didn't realize that there were any of these guys that we had talked about or heard about still available. So at that point, you just take the best available player. But they were more. Now, I said it may be a bit of a reach, but the way the draft went, which people tend to lose sight of, and all of the offensive and defensive linemen that were being taken off the board means that if you don't get an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, you ain't going to be able to get one in the second or third round of value.
But this is the other thing. First of all, he was the second interior guy taken because
Right.
the other guys were edges. And the other guy who got taken above him was his teammate, who everybody had as a top 5 guy. There were some people throwing in the chum that, that he was going to drop like a stone, which did not happen. Obviously, There was a trade there in the top 5, which we'll get into a little bit later with Travis Hunter and the Browns. But he was the second defensive lineman taken on the interior, and he was his teammate. He was his champion of a championship defense, which which bears pretty good fruit. That was kind of exactly what they did with the Christian Wilkins thing. Right. So I don't really understand it where it's like, if you really looked at the Dolphins, okay, and you look at their roster right now, defensive line, somebody next to Zach Sealer is overwhelmingly the biggest hole on the team. It's not even close. Like the offensive line, you basically have 4 or 5 already figured out. All right. It's going to be Paul Daniels at left. It's going to be Brewer at center. No idea who right guard is. Better not be Eichenberg. And it's going to be Austin Jackson. You know it. Like, that's what it's going to be.
Right.
They already made their moves. So you're going to bring this move here with, all right, the cornerback situation
Yeah, but
is not. It doesn't look great, but you have guys on the roster who play it. You have no defensive linemen.
But understand this: when the run of offensive and defensive linemen goes on, right? All those cornerbacks fall down. All those receivers fall down. All those linebackers, all those safeties, they all fall down, which gives you the ability to be able to get one of those guys in the second round. And that's the thing that people fail to understand. You not only have to try to take care of some of your deficiencies, but you also have to play the draft. You got to go with how the draft is going to determine that. So now there's going to be some teams that get quality corners, quality linebackers, quality wide receivers in the second and third round simply because they got pushed down.
So what else are they saying? What are they saying from Michigan headquarters on? Give me some goods. Come on, baby.
Still effort in it. Don't worry. I'm on it.
I'll tell you who was peacocking yesterday. If you did have a theory on Chris Greer, this guy's an A+ ass kisser. Okay. Hot seat season. First Michigan Wolverine ever taken in the first round since Stephen Ross has been owner. If you want to put your conspiracy hat on.
No.
I mean, he was they put that phone call on. Stephen Ross was happy.
I would say
he had the fight song on in the background, Leroy.
I would say this. It just kind of worked out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when all those offensive linemen started getting taken, right? I'm like, well, I know people are going to be upset because they're not going to get a quality offensive lineman if they draft one because they all were taken. And that's kind of so when you look at the pick, you look at the need, you look at the quality of player, they did well. Listen, I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound crazy. And I'm only saying this based on the size of both players. And I played with a guy who was All-American and All-World, but was the same size as Mason Graham. Okay. And they ended up trying to move him to linebacker because he was 260. Mason Graham's got a little more quickness. But if you're gonna be a smaller player, you better have something that stands out. And I would say this: everybody has a motor. Okay. That motor stuff don't mean nothing to me.
So you don't like the Browns pick, is what you're saying?
Huh?
You don't like the Browns pick, is what you're saying?
What do you mean?
Well, I thought you would have loved it, like a Michigan Wolverine going to Cleveland. Like that's you and Braylon Edwards and
it depends.
Not a very long list. They brought it up in his interview. I was like, oh, Leroy.
It depends, right?
And you got a first and a second.
Huh?
And you got a first and a second for him.
Right. I think that's the most important thing because what the Browns have positioned themselves to do is punt on quarterback and have more picks next year if the situation presents itself, right? If you really don't like any of these quarterbacks and you can get other players, then you can just pass on quarterback and say, guys, we're going to be in position to make our move next year if we need to move way up. But yeah, you have, and I think here's what happens during the draft. When people comment on draft picks because they haven't heard Mel Kiper or somebody talk about them, you're exposing your ignorance. Okay? So the people that have a problem with the pick is because they don't know who this kid is. That's it. Because they haven't heard his name being mentioned. So they immediately go to, oh, here we go, another pick, another whatever, right?
No, I think, I think the thought was, yeah, maybe it was a bit of a reach, but it's like, we can't, the best available need, like, it can't always be cardinal rule. Like if you do have a very obvious need that has to get filled, and what are we talking about? Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State guard, who went to Seattle 2 picks later. Like, you got to figure out if you're like, hey, he may be good, and you could have your guard for life, maybe, but you also need to figure out the defensive side of the ball because somebody needs to play next to Zach Sealer.
When you have and let's just put it out there, this ain't a knock on any player. This ain't a knock on any player that gets drafted from a smaller college or a smaller university, right? But I'm going to say this is the way of the world. If I have a chance of drafting a defensive lineman from a national championship team or a guard from San Diego State or South Dakota State, North Dakota State, right? You go ahead on and make that decision. Go ahead. I'll make you the GM. You're going to draft a guard who is the NFL players he's played against versus a guy who went through the playoffs.
Well, the Dakota Bulls very furious, Leroy. South Dakota State and North Dakota State for the King of Dakotas.
You know what the hell I'm saying.
And another person who loved it yesterday, John Gruden, favorite player in the draft.
Who?
Kenny G. Kenneth Grant was John Gruden's favorite player in the draft.
Right.
2 coaches. What are you looking at me for?
This whole Kenny G thing that you're throwing around.
What about
I'm thinking like how far
he could eat Kenny G for a snack.
Maybe like have you thought of like a sack celebration? I'm thinking of game ops already.
You want some jazz to play when he gets his sack?
Yeah, exactly.
You start playing the sax.
The sax, because it's a sack and the sax. There has to be some sort of correlation. Maybe we get ice cream filled saxophones. There's something there. I think there's something there.
But
Kenny G plays the saxophone, or did he play like a clarinet? What did he?
Yeah, it looks like
he plays all of the
woodwinds.
Right.
He plays the soprano saxophone, which looks like a clarinet.
Oh, right.
It's just a little baby sax. It's a sax without the.
He's not going to get baby sax. He's going to get big sax. Kenny G with the sax.
So,
that's game ops. That's game ops.
As of right now,
Point for
the only people who are unhappy with the pick are the ignorant people, the people that don't know about this player. And
people who are just mad. I like one guy says like it's not the pick, it's the person making the pick. Which is like, I get it. Nobody's happy with Chris Greer right now.
Right. But again, if you go with, here's the problem. The problem is when your team struggles, you want your draft picks to be 100%. And no draft picks are 100%. They just aren't. The teams that get lucky and have 4 or 5 guys that end up playing, they are extremely lucky. That's what it is. Lucky.
I just realized we sacked through this clock. Take a break. Back after this.